Okay, in this last section, what I want to talk about is how to use triggers, okay, and create hyperlinks, not to internet resources, but to other locations in a presentation, okay. Now, what I'm preparing you for is a more interactive type of experience. You can use, we said there were three main uses for PowerPoint. One was the presentation, someone actually giving a presentation where they're clicking through things, they're talking while it's going on. The other is more of a kiosk or a slideshow type that we just did. And this last type is a more interactive one, okay? Now, seniors, I know that you're going to be talking along with yours, but there's going to be this interactive component. Juniors, yours is going to be a little more interactive, but the same principles are going to apply here. Okay, so the basic concept we're going to be looking at is using triggers and making buttons. Okay. And the basic idea here is that, you know, we can use shapes, different pictures, we can use text boxes, and whatnot to have different events occur. Okay, and I'm going to put in a couple different slides. All right, just so we have slide 2 and slide 3, slide 4, and slide 5. Okay, now what we're going to do here is as we right click on an object, one of the options here is a hyperlink. Okay, and here what we're doing is we're creating a button to another location within a slide. Okay, so we have here a hyperlink, and by default it's an existing file or web page. Typically we think of hyperlinks as sending us to the internet. Okay, but in reality a hyperlink is just anything that we can click that'll send us to another location. Okay, so in this case we're talking about another location within this document. Okay, so we're talking about a place in this document, and you'll notice here there are some predefined ones. For instance, if you want to send it to the first slide, that's going to be different than telling it to go to this slide. All right, because if I have this as my hyperlink to the first slide, then if I insert a slide in front of what is now slide 1, the hyperlink will be adjusted to automatically go to that slide, not this one here. If I select this as my first slide, but then I go back and I put in a new one or a different one before this, it's going to go still to this, when that may or may not be what we want. So you need to look carefully at what's going on. We have options for first slide, last slide, next slide, previous slide, and then we have the individual slides listed based on their title, the title of the slide itself. And then there also are custom shows. You can actually have it linked to another PowerPoint. So you could have a presentation given within a presentation. But for our purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this button actually have us sent to slide 4. Okay? So, and I'm going to add some text. Go to slide 4. When you're creating a button, you should always have some kind of an indication of where it's going. And then I can come back down here to slide 4, and I can insert another button and I'll call this one Go Home. Alright, so I could input this one, and again, hyperlink to a place in this document, and I'm going to tell it to go back to the first slide. Okay. So now, this is a very basic presentation obviously, but now if we open this up, if I clicked anywhere else, it's just going to advance through the slides as usual. Okay. However, if I go to slide 4, I click on that, notice it took me to slide 4, and then I can click on this and it takes me back to slide 1, and we can go back and forth until we click somewhere other than that button. Okay? So, so that is one way that we can use buttons. They can trigger, or they can hyperlink to a different location. Okay? Another thing that we can do is in our animations, okay? I'm going to insert an effect here. I'm going to have it fade in, okay? And we'll have it go fast. But I'm going to have, as I go to my timing, there's this trigger section, okay? Now, by default, it's animated as part of a click sequence, all right? However, we can instead start the effect on the click of something else, all right? And we have this button here, which it wouldn't be real helpful because we'll be going to slide 4 as that's appearing, okay? So that won't be real helpful. So I'm going to make it to when I click on the title, it'll make the subtitle appear, okay? So I hit OK, and I'm going to start my presentation. And you'll notice, again, that still works, but now if I click on this, it makes that appear. Okay? If I... Oh, wrong button. If I click somewhere else, again, it just advances. Okay? So, that's what those are a couple of the options that we have. And the nice thing about this is, you'll notice here, I'm actually going to insert another little shape. And I'm going to put an exit effect. We'll have it fly out. No, not that fast. To the right. Okay. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to change its trigger to clicking on Title 1 as well. Oh, that's that one. I clicked on the wrong guy. This guy, I'm going to change it to have a trigger of clicking on Title 1 as well. Alright? So, now what will happen is when I click on Title 1, multiple things will happen. Okay, and this is where you can do, get a little more interesting effects. So I click on here, all right, and right now I have to click a second time to do that. If I were to set this with previous, okay, then they can go simultaneously. Alright? So you can see how these buttons can be used. And this is a very kind of juvenile way of using it, but you could use this to create like a trivia game, which juniors, that's one thing you're going to be doing. You're going to be creating an actual Jeopardy game where clues will remain hidden, or actually the answers to the clues will remain hidden until you click on Show the Answer button. You'll have a game board that you'll have to have buttons going back to, and so on. So, so that's something that you'll be doing. But again, we have buttons that can go to different slides. We have buttons that can trigger particular actions, and it'll keep doing that as many times as you click on it. Now, we can also have, you guys know that we have different slide transitions, okay? One thing that that we can do to make sure that our slides don't transition when we don't want them to. In other words, we can lock down the our presentation is no, get rid of that. Actually create a background on our slide. Okay. And I'm actually going to do that in our master, our slide master. Okay. I'm going to insert this background, and it doesn't even have to be visible. Okay. But let me just show you here. I'm going to send this to the back, and I'm even going to make it filled with white. Okay. Or this is how you could create your background image rather than formatting the background itself. But the reason why I show you how to do this is because now now what we can do is add an effect, alright, where it's not actually going to do anything per se. Yeah, let's see here. Which one do I want? Because it's white, it really won't show, but we're going to just do this. But what I'm going to have happen is set it to have a trigger when you click on it. Okay? Now, what will this do? What should this do? Okay? Why didn't I? Oh, that's why. Yeah. Wrong slide. So now on all of these slides, okay, if I accidentally click somewhere else, it won't advance, okay, because the trigger, I'll actually be clicking on this rectangle, and it'll just do that effect, okay. Now, there is a little easier way that you can do this as well. Let me get rid of that. And the actual easier way to do this is actually just to go to animations, and over here when it says advanced slide, just uncheck that. And basically what you've said is don't ever advance the slide. Okay? Now, the only time it will change slides is now when you have a button. Okay? So now I can click all over here. I can wait as long as I want, and it's never going to do anything. It's never going to leave this slide until I hit the button. Okay? And I can do different triggers. And guys, this is helpful because we don't have to worry about the user accidentally clicking on something and getting to a part of the presentation they weren't supposed to see yet. Okay? You limit the interaction to just the buttons that you have predefined. Okay? And that's helpful. Alright? Now, they still can use the arrow keys, but there's really no way to get around that. Okay? But we have different triggers for animations, and those can trigger more than one animation at a time. We have buttons to go from slide to slide. And then we have the ability to lock it down so slides will not advance when we are when we accidentally click somewhere other than a button. Okay? Does anyone have any questions about how we're doing this? By the way, let me just show you what I was talking about before. Okay? You remember when I defined this? Okay? And then I went here and I defined this as go to first slide. Okay? Or wait, which one did I define it as? Can't remember which one I defined it as. Here, I'm going to create a hyperlink here to move to a new slide. I'm going to have it move to the next slide. Alright? And now, I do this, I go to slide 4. I had formatted it to go to the first slide, so even though I changed slides, now it's going to the first slide still. Okay? So we can keep going in a circle if we really wanted to. Alright? But that's the difference between specifying a slide and telling it to go to the first slide. Alright? And that's kind of the advantage. If I still wanted it to go back here, I should have, and I need to go back and change the hyperlink so it's pointing here instead. Okay? So you guys are all going to be using those a bit. We'll practice a little bit tomorrow before we go over details.